These are the psychological traps that keep millions of people locked in relationships that are slowly destroying them. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why leaving a toxic relationship is so much harder than anyone on the outside could ever imagine. Every minute, 32 people in the United States experience intimate partner violence. That's not a typo. Every single minute. More than 16 million Americans suffer from intimate partner abuse every year, and 41% of women and 26% of men will experience some form of intimate partner violence in their lifetime. But here's the number that should stop you cold. Survivors attempt to leave an average of 7 times before they finally get out for good. 7 times. So why do people stay? Why do they go back? The answer isn't weakness, it isn't stupidity, it's psychology. And once you understand how these mechanisms work, you'll never ask, why don't they just leave again? The most powerful trap of all is trauma bonding. It's a psychological response to abuse, where the person being harmed actually forms a deep emotional attachment to the person harming them. That sounds counterintuitive, but it's driven by something called intermittent reinforcement. Think of it like a slot machine. You pull the lever and most of the time you lose, but every once in a while you win. And that unpredictable reward is exactly what keeps you playing. The same neurological mechanism plays out in abusive relationships. After periods of conflict, cruelty, or emotional devastation, the toxic partner suddenly becomes loving, apologetic, attentive. They buy flowers, they cry, they promise it will never happen again. And that rush of relief and affection following pain creates a bond that is quite literally addictive. Over time, victims internalize the abuser's perception of them. They lose their sense of autonomy, their self-worth erodes until they genuinely believe they can't survive without this person, or worse, that they deserve the mistreatment. This doesn't happen overnight. As one survivor described it, I stayed for 15 years, 15 long years of walking on eggshells, of second-guessing my reality, of feeling a constant knot of anxiety in my stomach. She wasn't staying because she was weak. She was trapped by a bond her own brain had built in response to trauma. Layer on top of that something called the cycle of abuse, a model developed by psychologist Dr. Lenore Walker in 1979. Walker interviewed over 1,500 women in shelter settings and identified a repeating 4-stage pattern. First comes tension building, where stress accumulates and the abuser grows more controlling, more critical, more irritable. Then the incident, an explosion of abuse, whether physical, emotional, or psychological. After that, reconciliation, where the abuser apologizes, shows remorse, makes promises. And finally, calm, a period of relative peace where everything seems almost normal again. Then it starts over. What makes this cycle so devastating is that each time it repeats, the violence tends to escalate and the time between stages gets shorter. But that reconciliation phase, that honeymoon period, it keeps reinforcing hope. People aren't staying for the relationship as it currently exists. They're staying for the relationship they remember, for the version of this person who held them and said sorry and swore things would be different. Then there's gaslighting, a term that comes from a 1938 British play called Gaslight, where a husband systematically manipulates his wife into believing she's losing her mind. In 2022, gaslighting was named Merriam-Webster's Word of the Year, which tells you just how pervasive this tactic has become. It's a form of sustained emotional abuse, where the abuser makes you doubt your own perceptions, your memory, your sanity. They lie outright. They deny things you witnessed. They minimize your feelings and tell you you're overreacting, you're too sensitive. That never happened. Dr. Stephanie Moulton-Sarkis, one of the leading experts on this topic, explains that gaslighting unfolds gradually over time. It's not one lie. It's a slow erosion of your ability to trust yourself. And when you can't trust your own judgment, how are you supposed to make the decision to leave? Now add the sunk cost fallacy, a well-documented cognitive bias where people keep investing in something, a project, a business, a a relationship simply because they've already invested so much. A 2018 study published in Current Psychology confirmed that this effect plays a significant role in keeping people trapped in unhappy relationships. You think, I've given this person 10 years of my life. I've sacrificed friendships, career opportunities, my own identity. If I leave now, all of that was for nothing. So you stay, not because things are good, but because walking away feels like admitting defeat. Interestingly, a 2013 study found that just 15 minutes of mindful meditation helped 77% of participants release a sunk cost, which tells you this isn't really about logic, it's about emotional attachment to past decisions. And then, there are the very real, very practical barriers. Financial abuse occurs in 99% of domestic violence cases. 99%. Abusers control bank accounts, destroy credit scores, put everything in their own name. When you don't have money for a security deposit, can't afford legal fees, and have no credit history, leaving isn't just scary, it becomes functionally impossible. As Sarkis points out, if an abuser refuses to let you manage your own money, it's because they know you're less likely to leave without financial independence. There's also a mechanism psychologists call learned helplessness. The concept comes from research by Martin Seligman, who discovered that when a person is repeatedly exposed to a painful situation they can't control or predict, they eventually stop trying to escape it, even when an exit becomes available. It's not that they no longer want to leave, it's that some part of the brain has concluded that nothing they do will change the outcome. So why try? In a toxic relationship, that conclusion gets reinforced every time an attempt to set a boundary gets punished, ignored, or twisted back into being the victim's fault. The exit is right there, but the belief that leaving would actually work has been quietly dismantled, one incident at a time. Shame runs through all of it. One survivor described being trapped not just by fear, but by the stories she kept telling herself. Fear of what everyone would say, fear of being labeled a failure, fear of admitting that the life she'd built was a crumbling facade. In 2014, the hashtag #WhyISTayed went viral after the Ray Rice domestic violence incident, and thousands of survivors shared their stories. What came through wasn't a picture of weakness. It was a picture of people navigating impossible circumstances with limited options and enormous pressure to keep up appearances. For many, the roots reach even deeper than the current relationship. People who grew up in environments where abuse was normalized often don't recognize what a healthy relationship looks like. Trauma bonding takes hold because, for some, it's the only model of attachment they've ever known. So what do we do with all of this? First, we stop judging. As Joanne Dussel put it, leaving is a journey. It's not an event. It's a process that builds coping skills and resilience across multiple attempts. Second, we educate ourselves, because understanding these psychological mechanisms isn't just academic. It's potentially life-saving. Nobody stays in a toxic relationship because they want to suffer. They stay because their brain has been rewired to believe that suffering is love, that leaving means failure, and that the danger of going is greater than the danger of staying. Understanding that doesn't just change how you see survivors, it might change how you see yourself.